Hello, hello. Welcome to From Impossible to Inevitable. I am your host, Megan Bauer. Thank you so much for joining me today and pushing play on today's episode. We have episode 95 for you here today, and I'm really excited to share with you a book that I recently finished. It is called The Big Leap, and it is by Gay Hendricks. And Gay's whole premise is that we all have these upper limiting problems that keep us where we are used to being, our comfort zone, if you will. So we all have these upper limiting problems that keep us only so happy, only so prosperous, only so successful, only so, our relationships are only so good. Like they can only get to this level, but not any higher. So Gay has identified 4 upper limiting problems, and he says that some people will have one or a couple. He said he's never met anybody who has all 4. So that's encouraging. But we all have at least one upper limiting problem that keeps us where we're used to being as far as happiness and prosperity and where our relationships are. And it's kind of like a thermostat. So, we've got this setting and we're used to being this happy. We're used to being this prosperous. We're used to be our relationships being like this, where we're used to being this successful. And whenever we start to rise above that setting, these upper limiting problems step in to lower us back down to our comfort zone. The good news is that because we have that setting, whenever it dips below that setting, we're usually not there for very long because we'll rise back up to that setting. However, Gay really talks about the upper limiting problem. This is the thing that keeps us where whatever it is that we are wanting to improve in our lives, it keeps us only so whatever, only so happy, whatever it is. These are the things that keep us down. Now, you can go read the book. It's a really good book. It's a quick read. At least I thought it was quick. And read about the 4 upper limiting problems and how to identify it and how to tackle those problems. But like a lot of things, I guess, just being aware that you have these tendencies is hugely powerful. So I really recommend you read the book and just acknowledge which of those upper limiting problems appears in your life to keep you stuck. What I wanted to share with, though, is what I think will be a really quick win, a really, really important idea that makes an impact right now. And he talks about one of the ways that we employ these upper limiting problems is through worrying. I don't know if you're a worrier. I have been a worrier. I still have worry tendencies that I work with. And reading his perspective on worrying and worry thoughts made a really big difference to me immediately. And that's what I wanted to share with you today. So he kind of reframes worrying thoughts. He says, worrying is usually a sign that we're upper limiting. It's usually not a sign that we're thinking about something useful. And then he takes it one step further. He says, almost none of your worry thoughts have anything to do with reality. And he makes a really important distinction between worry thoughts and helpful thoughts that you would worry about. So the example that he gives is if in the morning you had a tea kettle on the stove and you made yourself tea and then you left to go to work and you're like, oh crap, did I leave the stove on? And then you start worrying about that. Now that has very real, it could be immediate consequences if you left the stove on. And it's something that you would do something about right away. You would call a neighbor or you would rush home or whatever the case is, you would check that stove as soon as possible. That is a helpful worry thought. You are trying to avoid a fire. That's helpful. You're going to do something about it right now. Most of our worry thoughts, though, don't fall into that category. Most of our worry thoughts are not something that we're going to do something about right away. It's often not something that we can do anything about right away. And it may not even be something as real as, did I leave the stove on? It could be worrying about something in the future that hasn't even happened yet, that may not even happen. It could be worrying about, why didn't my friend text me back? Is she mad at me? Did I say something? Did whatever? That your friend just could be busy. Like, they could have had something crazy going on there that has nothing to do with you. Not helpful, right? So he talks about that we use worrying as a way to choke out the positive flow of energy within ourselves. And he says this, I loved this. 99% of my worrying was completely unnecessary. It was very humbling to realize that my worries were just there to make me miserable. It was even more humbling to realize that I was the guy who had his finger firmly pressed on the misery button. It was wonderful, though, to discover that I also had the power to quit pressing the button. Isn't that so good? So good. Because one of the very few things that you have 100% control over are your thoughts. And these worry thoughts are just there to make you miserable. They're not there to be productive. They're not there to be helpful. They are just there to make you miserable, to keep you from the positive flow of energy. So, like he says, and he talks about a tool that he developed. And it's a 7-step tool that you can walk yourself through when you have these worry thoughts. And I have very recently realized, use these steps, realized I was worrying, use these steps, and it is so effective. It is so effective. So if you're a note taker, go ahead and get out a pencil and a piece of paper to write these things down, because it can make a real difference. So he says the first step, he notices that he's worrying about something. How often are you worrying about something? And you could be worrying about it for 5, 6, 10 minutes before you even realize that you're worrying. Like, especially if it's a habit, especially if it's a kind of addiction, you don't even realize that you're doing it. So realizing that you're doing it is the first step. And then the second step is letting go of your worry thoughts and shift your focus away from them. This is easier said than done. I understand, as a recovering worrier. However, it is possible. He gives the example of a worry thoughts being a tennis ball, and it comes into your hand and you're holding on to it, and you can let go of it at any time. You really can. I've used this visual analogy in my head, picturing my worry thoughts. I'll see my worry thoughts as a tennis ball. And then when I want to let them go, I just open my hand and release. And I let my focus shift to something else entirely. The third step is wondering, what positive new thing is trying to come into being? So remember, these worry thoughts come up to choke off the flow of positive energy, to choke off your creativity, to choke off your happiness. So when it's doing that, it's reacting to something positive that's trying to come in, some idea, some feeling, some thought that's trying to come in that will make a positive difference. And he says he usually gets a body feeling, not a thought or idea, of where the positive new thing is trying to come through. So when you let go of your worry thoughts, wonder about what positive thing is trying to come through. The fourth step is feeling into your body. Feeling, where was this trying to come through in? Was it trying to come through into my mind? Was it trying to come through into my heart, my stomach, my soul? Where was this trying to come into? And then step 5 is opening your focus to feel that body feeling deeply as you can. So a lot of the times for me, it's trying to come into my heart or my mind. And so I just feel into that as deeply as I can for as long as I can. Well, that's step 6. Feel into that as long as you possibly can. And then step 7 is later, he often gets an idea of the positive thing that was trying to come through. So your worry thoughts may subvert the positive thing in that moment. However, you let go of the worrying and you open yourself up in your body and in your mind for the positive new thing. And it just comes back later. It tries again later. It's like, oh, you're busy right now. I'll come back. And then it does. And every time you do that, every time your worry thoughts come up when you're experiencing something positive, new and positive, and you continually drop the worry thoughts, let go of them, and allow space for the positive new thing, that positive new thing will show up. And this process will get easier and faster. And you will raise that metaphorical thermostat. You're like, okay, I am open and ready for the positive things to just come in. I don't even need to bother with the worry thoughts so much until you raise that thermostat. And your upper limiting problems, which don't really disappear necessarily, they just kind of transform and go with you as you raise your thermostat for the comfort level of your level of happiness and prosperity and success, and the way your relationships are. As that raises, your upper limiting problem will also raise. But the thing is, you will have gotten practiced at defeating that upper limiting problem over and over and over again as you raise your thermostat. So it becomes less of an issue. Even though it's still there, it's still hanging out, it's not really that big of a deal because you know how to overcome it. You've done it before and you can do it again. So this was a really great book. I enjoyed it and I hope that you give it a shot and that you find out what upper limiting problems are keeping you stuck. And yeah, that feels good for today. All right. Thank you again for joining me. I wish you all of the best. Until next time. Bye for now.